Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Monkey Wrench. I'm Kelly, the monkey with the wrench. Today we're starting another project. The zero turn is finished. I think the last two videos will be coming up in the next few days. I post the video every other day at 6 p.m. They're on schedule, and that's what seems to be working with YouTube. I've been getting anywhere from 1,000 to 2,500 views by posting every other day. So that might be a hint for you guys. Some of them still get 50 or 100 views, but then some of them skyrocket and go crazy right away. So I appreciate everybody that's watching. We are starting on another total pig, this Yardman yard bug. Now I got this mower about a year and a half ago for free, and I have not had much time or much need for it. And it pretty much came just the way you see it, missing the front wheel, all torn apart. It was free, and I like the style of it. I like the look of it. And now it seems that I'm in a position where I could put it to use. I have a lawn service. For those of you that watch my channel, you know that I cut grass part-time because it's really good money. You get, 35, 40 bucks a cut, and it takes less than an hour. But I don't drive. I drive an electric bike. And I have a trailer for it, and I was tired of cruising around with the trailer on the back of the bike with equipment on it. So I now have set up on the north side of my town and the south side, and I have put equipment down on the south side in the neighborhood that I work at. So I just drive the machine and pull the trailer behind it and do what I got to do, and then I come home, and the next day I'm cutting up here, so I have another set of equipment, another machine, and that allows me to work more. And this is going to be put into service, and the reason being is that it is only 30-inch cut, I believe. This is the deck for it, and it's only 30 inches, and it will fit through most people's gates. Most people have small gates, and it will fit through nicely. It's got a nice little 10-horse, 9-horse motor, and it's going to do well. I have some lawns around here that I can use it for, so I'm going to put it into service. So this is probably going to be quite a long video, or a couple of longer videos. It's the fuel tank, and I just wanted to give you guys an overview. These little guys never stop. And let's just see what we got here. We got a Briggs & Stratton 9 horsepower. Alright, and when it came to me, the starter was frozen. That's the only thing. I've done two things to it. I put the starter on, and if you watch my zero turn series, that's actually the starter from the 26 horsepower Briggs that was on my zero turn. And there's a video on there of how I changed the gear on the starter because the gear on it was no good. And I said, hey, one day I'll use that starter on something else. Well, now we're using it on a 9 horsepower yard bug. So for those people that think you have to look up parts individually by model number, you really don't. If you're dealing with Briggs, I was actually surprised, don't get me wrong, that the same starter that's on a 26 horsepower Briggs fits on a 9 horsepower Briggs. But it was plug and play. So I put that on. And the other thing was, up here, this is your shifter. It's just a El Cheapo, the way they make these little cheap things. I think this thing was probably less than $1,000 when it was new. And a cable went to the front and to the back, and it went around to the transmission, and when you pulled it one way, it put it into forward, and then when you pulled the other way, it pulled the other cable and put it in neutral and reverse. So you just went back and forth. Well, those cables, those two frozen cables, we're 50 bucks. And if you watch my channel, you know damn well I'm not spending 50 bucks on parts if I don't have to. So what I do have are hundreds of these. These are regular cables off of a regular lawnmower, any regular push mower. They're all the same. And what I did was down below, I won't be able to show you that, it's kind of rainy today, but I connected those. They were just Z bends on a pivot point like this, and I just put the Z bends back in. That's how they originally came, although it had a different style up here that went through here, and it had I don't know if I can find it. It had a way to tighten it down and hold it and all that crap. Here's one of them, but the other end I think is missing. Oh, there it is. Okay, so that screwed down, and you know, it was all that, and it's a long cable, and it's 25 bucks a piece, and there's two of them. So we're not doing that. I used regular lawnmower cables, attached them at that end, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this end, cut it off here, loop here, mount it somewhere up here, and I'll just pull it manually. Again, this is my machine, so I don't care, and you won't really be able to see it anyway. So the first thing I'm going to do, I had to buy a replacement tire for it originally when I bought it, because I was trying to roll the chassis around. A buddy of mine gave me a matching tire, and the tube holds air. I pulled it out, but the inside of this thing is kind of rusted up. So I'm going to take the drill with a little wire brush on it. I'm going to get all the rust out of there, and then I'm going to put that tire back together. And for those of you who comment down below, and I'm happy for your comments, let me just address something. I don't often use the correct term for something. When you're trying to set up and film something that should take 10 minutes, you're going through all this stuff in your head. You're trying to figure out what needs to be filmed, what doesn't. It gets confusing. It gets to be a pain in the butt. The time it took me to move some things around, set up the camera, and get ready to start this, I could have been finished this. But I wanted to show you guys how easy it is to get the rust off of these. And this is all I'm going to do, is get the surface rust off. Hey. So when I put that new tube back in, there's nothing there to puncture it. So let me get that done, and I'll be right back. We'll put it together. Now, you're never going to get all the discoloration off of this thing. This thing is God knows how old. It still has some pitting going on, but all the rust is off. There's not going to be any sharp edges. And if you're worried about it, before you put your tube back on, do what we do with bicycles. And I know that kids do this, but even adults that ride bikes, mountain bikers, electric bikes, I am forever wrapping my rims with tape. This is just electrical tape, to make sure that there are no sharp edges, anything is developed, and that actually the rim stays a little bit more protected from anything that comes along in the future. So you can always wrap your rim on the inside with a little bit of electrical tape to protect the tube you're about to put in there. And because I'm going to be using this so-called commercially, you know, I am going to be using it for 5, 6, 7 hours a day, because I can get motors for free if I blow one from being worked too hard. Because, you know, these little things weren't made to be worked commercially. They're great if you own a property and you just need to cut it, and no big deal. But when you're out there cutting for 5, 6, 8 hours a day, they get tired on you. That's why there's a huge difference when you're buying a machine, if you're going into the lawn service, from buying a commercial machine or buying a box store machine. You can buy an Echo weed eater at Home Depot for $300, and it's $600 or $700 from a commercial place, and you don't realize there's a huge difference inside. In the box stores, they put plastic parts to keep costs down. They're not as well made. They might have the same name, Echo or whatever, John Deere, Husqvarna, it doesn't matter. But on the inside where it counts to sell them through the box stores, they're not good. They won't last anywhere near as long. So, in this case, I'm just going to feed. I'm going to take some more air out of this thing. You want some air in there, but not a lot. You still want to be able to move this thing around and do what you got to do. So like I was saying, I'm going to be using this thing sort of commercially for at least a few months. It'll last me at least a year. So I wanted to wrap that with a little bit of tape just to protect this thing, because I'm going to be beating the crap out of it. That's also why I'm not spending a lot of money to fix it. Now, while I'm doing this, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about something you won't hear about on too many channels. They may not remember to tell you. They may not want to tell you. You can buy cheap tire tubes from Amazon all day long. There's a difference. Those tire tubes have your valve stem coming directly out of the center. Well, that's not how it works on tubes. On tire rims, they come out one side or the other. Oh, I need to touch that up a little bit. They come out one side. So when you buy this from a commercial store, I don't know if you can see that or not, but this actually points out one side. It's got an angle to it. So make sure that the angle is on the same side as your valve stem, and in this case that would be down. So watch when you're buying tubes, because when it comes straight out the center, as soon as you put air in it, it'll pull itself out of the hole you jammed it into, and then you're kind of screwed. So buy the better tubes. I'm going to go ahead and put that in. Now once you get it fed through where it's supposed to go, make sure that it's turned so that it's perfect on the tube. It's set on this side. I pushed about half of this side down. Sometimes you can get it to go all the way, and other times you can't. But when you're doing it, for those of you that haven't done this in a while or worked on bikes, you can actually puncture the tube with your screwdriver. I've tried using those little plastic thingies so that I didn't puncture my tube, and they're just not strong enough. You need a good screwdriver or two to get in there. And just do your best to work it around. Sometimes you can't go more than half an inch at a time. Sometimes it just takes a while. And sometimes when you're trying to do shit for the camera, it can be worse. If you push the opposite side down into the groove, it makes it easier. And there you go. That's it. Let me get my little air pumpy and we'll pump it up. Now I use my little El Cheapo pump hooked up to a 12-volt battery. And if all is right and I didn't pop a hole in the tube, it should blow right up. I set these to about 10. It's about 7.5. About 10. Most lawnmower tires are set to be 10 pounds of pressure, 10 psi. And that's it. We're good to go. Let's go put it on the machine. Now I already have it jacked up, obviously. I have some washers here as a spacer, and also to help when you put this back on. This just goes on just like that. Then there's a washer. If you lost the original, just get a washer from the box store, Ace, wherever. It's just got a pin, that's it. And it just rides on it. So now I'm gonna let the jack down. And she rolls. These things are meant to do like 4 miles an hour. Actually, they're meant to do a little less than that. So there's no special bearing or anything like that inside. It literally just sits there. And that's it. So there's our tire. Now the next thing we're going to do, the oil stick was out of it. And you can see there, that was exposed and it got rainwater in it. So I'm going to pull that right here on the front. It just uses a regular extension. I'm going to pull that out and drain it again. I've drained it once before, but I want to make sure that there's no water in it. And I may have to jack up the back of the tractor to get it all in the right direction, to get it all out. Then we're going to fill it up with oil. All right, so a regular old 3/8 extension fits right in that hole, fits right in there. Take that cap out. And don't worry, right here, this is all sand, as you can see. The reason for that is because I dug it out and put a catch in there so I can take that sand out for when I do spill some oil. Ew, and it's coming out all white. That's because it's mixed with water. You see, your 3/8 ratchet just fits in there. It's just a cap. Don't lose it. But that's all it is. So I hope you can see that. That's what happens to your oil when water gets in it. So we're going to make sure all that's drained out. And so I've jacked up the back side of the machine. And I have it jacked up and tilted this direction so that anything that's left in there will just find its way out. I'm trying to move that so I can show you what it looks like, and of course there's nothing to hook it on, but that is just going to gob and gooze out. There's not a whole lot you can do about it. It's not going to hurt anything as long as you let it drain as much as possible. When you put fresh oil in there, what you're going to want to do, I know it's expensive, especially these days, but what you're going to want to do is put fresh oil in there, run it for about 15 minutes or so it gets good and hot, and then you're going to want to drain it again, put fresh oil in there again. I know that sounds like a waste of oil, but in this case, what you're trying to do is get all that water out of there. It'll mix with the oil, just like you see there, and then there'll be more oil to flush it out. Now you can use old oil if you have some old oil laying around. It doesn't particularly matter. Dirty oil is not a big deal. So if you have some old oil laying around, use that. Do not use water. That kind of defeats the purpose. But I've got a bottle of old oil that I'll put in there. I'll run it for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then flush it out, do it again. And that way you're getting most of the water out of there, if not all of it. A few drops are not going to hurt it. There's plenty of oil in there. It takes almost a quart, and it'll be fine. So when that's finished, I'm going to flush it out, put some new oil in it, and work on something else. Okay, while that's still draining the last of whatever's in there, the fuel line on the fuel tank is pretty old and split. I don't think the camera will focus very well, but it needs to be replaced. There seems to be nothing wrong with the tank, so I've got some fuel line here to replace. New fuel line and a new fuel filter. I'm going to do that right quick. Now, those of you that watch my channel know that I use an IV style extra tank whenever I'm testing something, just hooked up. And when I put fuel to this to see if it would crank, I noticed it was overflowing, which means the needle and seat inside the carburetor are bad. We've got another carburetor here. They're all pretty much the same. Is this thing zoomed in or what? I'm trying to film on my tablet today. Okay. I've got another carburetor here. That's not it. There it is. My buddy gives me these plastic containers, which I keep pretty much anything in that I need to stay clean. There it is. And this came off of a different machine, but they're all standard, basic, the same. So I'm going to clean this one real quick, and I'm going to pull the carburetor off of the bug, which is just basically this post, that post, and take the linkages off. And I'm going to see if I can clean the needle and seat, put it back together, and see if it still leaks. It's pretty old, and I'll use a Q-tip and a drill for that. And if not, we'll put the other carburetor on there and we'll see if that one leaks, and we'll go from there. Okay, two things I want to bring up. When you are putting new fuel line and new fuel filters on, you have two choices. You either have a paper filter like this, or you have these screen filters. That's literally all this is. It's a plastic filter with a screen in the center, a very fine mesh. Do not make the mistake. You look at this and go, well, you've got a riding mower and you're going to use the crap out of it. You should put the expensive filter on. This is not your choice. The paper filters, it's kind of like a coffee filter in your in the old coffee pots. The fuel cannot go through the paper membrane fast enough on a gravity-fed tank. This works by gravity. The fuel is in the tank. Gravity pulls it down the line to the carburetor. If you put a paper filter in there, the gravity will not feed the fuel fast enough. It can't soak through the paper and get to the carburetor. Your stupid tractor won't run, and you won't understand why. Well, I gave it a tune-up, I put a new spark plug in it, and I changed the fuel filter, and now all of a sudden it won't run. There's why. You only use these on machines that have fuel pumps. A fuel pump can suck it through here fast enough to get it to your carburetor. So don't make that mistake and think by using the more expensive one, you're doing yourself a favor. You are not. Your machine will run intermittently at best, and probably not at all. And it'll run for a few seconds, a minute or so, and then it'll shut off. And then a few minutes later, you'll start it, and you'll go, I don't understand. It starts, but it won't stay running. It's your fuel filter. Now, the other thing that we got going on here is this is a little 9-horse motor, okay? This is the carburetor off of our machine that we're working on right now. and this is the donor carburetor. Now you won't find any differences to speak of between the two different kinds of carburetors, except this has an elbow that comes out and this one comes out straight. In this case, that doesn't matter. But the larger machines have this cutoff solenoid. Needs electricity, you put electricity to it, it pulls the solenoid open, allows fuel to flow. When you take the electricity away, it closes up, stops the fuel from flowing. So if I do end up using this carburetor over this one, I will take this off and use the bolt to keep that on. We do not need that. Otherwise, I'm just going to pull this thing. It's real simple. And I've got to get the pin out. So let me pull that pin real quick. So what we have here, besides a dirty rag, don't lose that. Don't lose that. Pull your pin, if you can get to it. This is just a finishing nail, just to help push it through. Take that off. Take that off. And the reason it's overflowing is because the needle and seat are not setting correctly. Now, there's not much you can do with this. It's a rubber tipped needle. You can try and replace that, but 9 times out of 10, the problem... Oh, and see, that's full of jelly. There's jelly in there. And I cleaned this carburetor the other day. There's jelly in there. So we're going to clean this thing again. It must have been stuff that was under this plate, and the new gas turned it to jelly and brought it out. And that's fine. That's good. I don't have an ultrasonic cleaner. But the problem where the needle goes in is this right here. And it often gets dirty. And there could just be a little piece of dirt. Oh, look at all that. Yeah. There's just dirt in there stopping that thing from seating. So what I'm going to do is take this Q-tip, put it in the old drill, and we're just going to clean out this hole a little bit. And get out any dirt. And because Q-tips are cheap, we'll just keep using a few of them until no more dirt comes out. Because between you and me, I already know that this thing runs, because yesterday, before I decided to start working on it, I put on my IV tank and I fired it up, even without oil in it. I want to know if she'd run. And when I did, the carburetor was overflowing. That's why I know that the needle and seat was dirty. Now the carburetor, the Q-tip's coming out pretty clean. I'm just going to do one more. The needle moves up and down just fine. It's the very point of the needle that has to go in there and seal. And the very point, the tip, is rubber. So just kind of make sure that there's nothing stuck to it, and we'll hope. Now she'll run even if the carburetor leaks. But if the carburetor leaks, if it overflows, if this doesn't shut the fuel off the way it's supposed to, it'll continue to flow into the manifold, into the engine, past the rings, down into your oil, and it'll ruin your oil. And then when you try to run it, the oil will be no good and you'll blow up your machine. So something stupid like this is why you find gas in your oil. I have customers that come to me all the time and say, my oil is overflowing and it looks weird and I don't know why. And the problem is that the needle stopped sealing off the flow of the fuel, which then flowed down into the engine, through the entire engine, and filled up the oil pan, the bottom of the engine, with gas. Gas dilutes oil, and if you try to run it like that, after a few minutes it'll overheat and everything will seize up, and you will ruin your entire machine because you didn't realize. That's why I tell people, check your oil every single time you use it. Now, I don't check my oil every time I use it because I use it 6 times a day. But I check it every morning because overnight it'll fill up. If there's a leak, you can't see it, you don't know. The biggest way to tell whether there's a leak is when you go and look in your fuel tank and your fuel tank's empty and you go, wait a minute, I just put gas in this thing yesterday. Or I put gas in it, I know I filled the tank because gas prices are going sky high. I filled the tank knowing I was going to need it next week and it's empty. Well, where'd the gas go? It didn't evaporate. It went down, it leaked out, it went down into the motor, and it's in your oil. And now, if you try and run that thing, you blow up your engine. And I get stuff like that all the time. Luckily, most people see it, they smell it. If they keep it in their garage or whatever, then they smell it and they go, oh, I keep getting the smell of gas and my tank keeps emptying. So can you check it out? And that's when I tell them, yeah, glad we found the problem. So you can also put a cutoff valve on your fuel line so you can turn off the fuel. In this case, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to put the carburetor back on and see if the leak is gone. And I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I have put the oil plug back in it, put the dipstick holder back on, cleaned everything up, flushed it out, put in fresh oil. You didn't need to watch that. The tank is just in place at the moment. And I'm not real concerned about anything that might be in there. But of course it's gonna rain. What I want to do is just put some fuel in here, let it go where it's supposed to go. Let it fill up the carburetor. And we're going to give it a second to see if the carburetor overflows or not. That's all I want to do. So I'll bring you back in a minute if it starts overflowing. Okay, so the fuel does not seem to be leaking out of the carburetor. Everything is dry. The fuel that I put in the tank is still holding. I did pull the gas line off the carburetor to make sure it was flowing correctly, which it is. So we should have been, that should have cleaned it out. We should be okay. We're going to find out. I've hooked up the battery. This is my motorcycle battery. I have to make a mount for a proper battery. This particular machine takes one of those weird shaped tiny 12-volt batteries that cost $100, and I'm not buying one of those. I'm buying a $30 battery from Walmart. It's a little larger than the space, so I will have to make a bracket to hold it, but we'll deal with that later. Now the key does not work. I'm not sure why. I don't know if there is a safety somewhere that I'm missing. I think there's one on the transmission, but I've got the brake lockdown in place. The key is turned on, and let's put some power to the solenoid and see if she will run. I also put a zip tie on the spark plug boot so I could pull it and shut it off if it starts and runs. That's get a little bit of starting fluid and spray it in there and see if we can't bump this thing. Because, oh, the choke does work. Let's see if the choke helps. Oh, I idled it down. That was my fault. I forgot it had a choke, and then I idled it down to see if it would run. We're going to play with it a little. Let's see if we can start it up again on choke. Okay, so I was able to shut it off by the key. As you saw, the butterfly on the carburetor is jumping, and that shows that there's still some dirt in that carburetor, but it's running fairly smooth. The choke, as soon as I put it on choke, she popped right off. And remember, this thing has been sitting in this yard, uncovered, pulled apart, with water in the crankcase, nothing hooked up, nothing working, for at least 1.5 years. It's been sitting over there where my motorcycle is, in the rain and the crap, and she fired right the hell up, and I have not done anything that you have not witnessed. So when people tell me they've got this old machine laying around in their backyard, they want to know if it's worth fixing. Well, you can see the kind of crap I got to go through to get it to work. It's only been about 3 hours today. I started at about 11, and it's about 2 p.m. But we now have a working motor. Like I said, I replaced the starter, but that came off my zero turn, so that was free. Fuel line, you know, $5 worth of fuel line. Clean the carburetor. I didn't have to use the donor carb. I will clean that some more, probably soak it in fuel. And as you run it a little, it could also clean itself out a little. But I'm running high test through it. I'm going to let it run for a bit. And actually, real quick, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to see if it'll drive. Yeah, I'm going to see if it'll drive real quick. If it'll at least move, which means I got to start it. Then I got to put the seat down. Make sure that nothing's on the ground. It's going to get in the way. Yeah, I'm not going to do much. I'm just going to see if it'll move. So, let's start it back up. working. It went in reverse and forward. It's not working real well when you change gears. Don't worry about the smoking. That's the muffler getting hot and burning off 2 years worth of crap landing on it. But I'm running over the battery. I can't get it to stick in gear. So I'm going to work on that and find out. But apparently it does drive. And it's running pretty good. Started up instantly. So I'll bring you back after I get a few things tweaked. Alright, the rain is coming back. So I wanted to show you guys. I went ahead and put the column back on, the steering wheel, and figured out why the key wasn't working. I zip tied the fuel tank down. I zip tied the battery down just for the moment to show that we have a turnkey mower. There's a safety switch here. The pedal on the right is the gas pedal. I think the pedal on the left is the blades. I'm not sure. I did drive this thing around the yard and it's slower than dog shit. So I don't know why that's happening. I also don't know if this is considered the brake. I think so. But again, we got cable issues and everything else. So I'm just going to go ahead, push that. In order to start it, there's a lever right here on the floor to lock the brake in place. That's good. And now we just put choke on. And we're back to turnkey, and there is the rain, which tells me it's time to go. So on the next episode, I will figure out why it's driving so slow. The drive belt might not be any good. I will mount the gear shift cables somewhere. I'm not sure where yet. See, this thing, I only need it really to drive in forward. It doesn't really have to reverse. So if I can get it to stay in forward using these cables, it's good enough for me. And someday when I get the other cables, I'll mount them back where they actually go, and I'll show you how that works. But in the next video, I'm going to be working on the drive system. It drives. I drove it all across my yard. It just drives real slow. So I'm going to see if there's adjustments that need to be made. The belt's a couple of years old. It's been sitting rotten, so we'll see what happens. Thanks for stopping by. Hit the like button. It's somewhere between my chin and my balls, right down there. Hit the subscribe button on your way out the door. Thanks for stopping by. See you soon. And there's the rain coming down. Just in time for me to get it covered over with a tarp, cover a few other things. Rain is good. It means work. It means machines to fix and grass to cut. Thanks for stopping by.